Well, hello, wealthy women. You know what's going to happen now. I'm going to do another beautiful success story interview, and I just know that you're going to love this beautiful woman with such an amazing story and such a fabulous business. So rather than me just continue to, you know, be all like excited, let me show you why you should be excited. So over to you. Go ahead and let us know who you are, where you're from, what your business is about, and all the goodies about that.
Thank you. So I'm Lixxy. I'm the CEO of the Six Figure Success Club. I'm from the UK, and the idea of the Six Figure Success Club is to help female entrepreneurs go from an employee of their small business to a six-figure CEO. And the reason I started my business was because when I was in my early 20s, I was in a very bad marriage that ended in a very bad divorce. By 23, I was divorced and living on a sofa and questioning my life choices because that's not exactly how I imagined my 20s would be. So I took a huge leap of faith and started a corporate career that I didn't really understand other than it was in sales. But over the next 6 years, I built a really successful corporate career. And by 30, I had hit six figures and bought my first property by myself. And within a year, I had doubled my salary. And that's when I decided that I wanted to help other women do the same thing. So those women that have got dreams and passions and things that they want to be doing, but don't really know how to do that. Which is why I started the business. And then I pivoted into business coaching last year. So I'm now a certified business strategist and I help female entrepreneurs, as I said, go from an employee of their small business to six-figure CEO.
I love this. And I love the story because I think, like so many of us, there has been some pivotal point in our lives, right? That felt like the world was falling apart. And how is this going to get better? Just to come out of it later with such a light at the end of the tunnel and so much advancement in one or many parts of our lives. And we look back and you all almost see the thread of why certain things had to happen because they build on it. And it just gives you, for anyone listening that maybe is going through one of those, dark night of the soul moments right now, just have faith. There are so many stories about, that sort of rags to riches experience, right? No matter what the situation might be, women are powerful beings. They're creative beings and they have so much to give. And having you be able to take that, like, the gifts, right, that they have, passions that they have, and create a business, a real business out of it is so key because most women, I shouldn't say this, many entrepreneurs in general, there's so much creative, passionate energy that happens, and that's one side of it, and it is the oxygen for sure. However, that foundational thing is a little bit harder to put into place. And I know a lot of women get overwhelmed. What should I do? How do I start? Do I need to do this and that and this? And it just becomes whoa. And so knowing that you can help them to take their great ideas and put it to a proper organized container, so to speak, that they can go out there with is, just amazing. So like like can you give an example like of maybe how do you go about doing that? A little small idea about what it would be like to work with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So the place I always like to start is auditing the business as it is. So I like to focus on three areas, which is your time management. So how are you actually spending your day? What are you focused on? Your mindset, because half of the role of being a CEO is about how you feel about yourself and your business. And then the business strategy and profitability. What are you bringing in? What are you spending it on? And is the business actually making the money that you want it to do? So we'd start with a business audit where we look at those things and kind of assess where you're at the moment in your business, and then based on what we find and what gaps there are, that would shape the coaching that we do and the process that we go through.
Just curious, out of those three areas, does one come up more often than another? Do you see a pattern that comes across as one of the biggest hurdles that is going on?
I think they're all for different people, different ones of them are bigger, but I always think it's the time management and how you're spending your day is the key, because if you can nail that, it's easier to make the other things kind of fall in line. If you're constantly feeling like you're working all hours and you've got no time to do anything else, then you're not going to be spending time working on your mindset, and you're not going to take time out of the business to look at the strategy. So if you can nail kind of prioritizing the right things so that you're bringing in some money while not having to work 24/7, I think that would be the one I love starting with, because I think that makes the biggest difference in the short term.
And I love what you just said, actually, because it's about, you said, bringing in the money. That's like the priority, right? And I think a lot of times, especially in the very beginning when someone's creating a business, there's so much excitement and wanting to make it all like beautiful in the website and in all the graphics and all the things, right? And there's a tendency, because that feels good, to be creative, and it feels like progress, and of course it is in some regard, but it's not a money-making activity. And I think also when someone's starting, they're a little bit afraid to really kind of like put themselves out there and declare that this is a real business now, not just a hobby, so to speak. And I think there's a real transition between someone being able to be honest with themselves and say, okay, am I just pushing papers around and feeling like I really did accomplish something? Or, and it comes down to it, did I make money? Because if you don't make money, you will not be able to sustain your business. So it is the number one priority, right? Just like a body needs food for fuel. If we don't have food, we're in trouble. So, I like that. You just get right to it, straight out of the gate. You need to make money. That's the priority. And all the other things will fall into place. The other thing I was just curious about, with time management, do you find this? Because I do. The more space I give myself to finish something, the less I accomplish. The smaller amount that I schedule, I am like sometimes a superhero. And this has actually worked in my favor, because I don't have to work 5 days a week. I basically work 3 days a week, and they're not full days. And so I get more done in those 3 days than if I had 5 days to do it. So can you speak about the psychology of that? What is going on with us? Because I know I'm not the only one that has this situation.
Yeah, I think it's Tony Robbins that says if you give yourself 30 days to do something, it will take you 30 days. But if you give yourself 3 hours, it will take you 3 hours. And there is just something odd about human nature in that whatever time frame you give yourself, that is how long it's going to take you. And it depends on the value that you see in whatever it is that you're doing. So if it's something that you don't particularly enjoy doing and you don't understand why doing it is going to be beneficial, it's probably going to take you longer to do because you don't want to do it. So tying the value to the action, or obviously we talk about your why a lot, tying that to what you're doing can make the difference between taking the action and not taking the action.
Yes. So well said. Absolutely. That why is everything, right? And also when you said, because there are certain activities, even in the most loved businesses, we all have certain activities we don't totally love. And I think that in a way it'd be nicer to say, okay, you have an hour to do this rather than a day, because then if you allow yourself a day, you have to think about it and stress about it for the whole day. Whereas if you just have that hour, you're like, okay, I'm not going to love it maybe, but at least an hour later, I'll be done with it, and so there's that incentive. And I think the idea of this time management is actually, when you really think about it, it's so beneficial, because you're basically finding ways to give yourself more free time to enjoy the other things outside of the enjoyment of your business. So I love that. I'm very intrigued by time management. So I love the way that you are basically going about it, when you have a client, and to get them on the proper track. So yeah, it's just, what is your most favorite transformation you've seen so far in your experience?
Oh, that is a great question. So I worked with a client who was doing a bit of everything. So they were working full time, they were running a business, they were at school or uni, and trying to manage all of those things was a real challenge for them. And I helped her map out when she was going to focus on which area, because they were all important and they all needed They all needed her focus because the full-time job was paying the bills at the time, but she wanted the side hustle to be successful, and she obviously wanted to succeed in her degree. And yeah, so I spent some time with her mapping out when she was going to do each thing, how she was going to finish her assignments for school, and she managed to do all of it. And yeah, that was probably my favorite client that I've worked with so far.
That. And I love that, because then you hear these type of stories with someone, say, juggling three very important balls in the air and making it work. And then, you'll hear stories about someone maybe having, one thing going on and it's just too much. It's just an overwhelm. And it really does come down to that time management, setting your priorities, knowing what your big why is, knowing that there is that result if you follow along. So yeah, I love this. I love this because I think, so many of us can benefit from that structure. And a lot of times with entrepreneurs, we're so passionate and creative, but our structures are not always in place. I myself have struggled with that. I tend to, and it can come in other ways, right? Shiny object syndrome, right? Doing a lot of nothing tasks, fulfilling your day, or yeah, just it takes a little while to get real with yourself, but it's much better to have someone like yourself, a coach, kind of just call it like it is. So love what you're doing. It's just I'm so thrilled about it. So like, because I know how important it is to so many. But okay, so what is your website so people can find out more about you and how you can help them?
So it's six-figure success.club.
Love it. .club, not .com, .club.
Club.
Okay, so now ladies, the next part is all of the juicy success questions where you're really going to be able to relate or learn from about how a successful businesswoman runs her day, how she thinks, what she is standing for. So let's get ready to do our success question rounds. And I got to put on the glasses.
I feel like I'm a mastermind or something waiting for
I know. It really is. It's really good. There's so much gold and that comes out of these interviews that are so helpful and inspirational. And I always get personally inspired and learning. I'm always learning from others. And it just, it's kind of a way to pay it forward to help others to, continue on that track, to let them know they're not alone. People are like them. Other women are going through certain things and, they have some answers because they're ahead of certain parts of their game. So on that note, let's see. I love this question because it really makes you narrow in. What would be your number one professional tip for a woman to grow her business?
Oh, that's a great question. And on the same vein of time management, it would be plan your time in advance. Know when you're going to do everything, so that it gets done, and so that you can manage your workload effectively. Because when you're the CEO of your business, especially if you're kind of at the point in your journey where you haven't yet outsourced or you don't yet have a team, you're the CEO, but you're also head of finance, head of sales, HR, you're doing all of the things, and they're all important. But if you don't take the time to plan when you're going to do each of those, and when you're going to do revenue generating activities, and when you're going to do your visibility strategy, if you don't know when you're doing any of these things, you're going to end up not doing enough of something, and something's going to slip through the cracks. So my biggest advice to everyone is always to plan. And it sounds counterproductive taking time out of the business to create a plan, but it's not counterproductive at all. And it is absolutely the key to success. Having a strategy in your business and having a plan to execute that strategy is the key.
I want to speak on that because as you were speaking, and I agree with you on everything that you're saying, but I also want to speak to the fact that many of us, it can be, whether we're trying to eat healthier or exercise or, go on social media every day at 3 o'clock to do our reels or whatever it might be, and we stick to it, right? So like you have this business plan, time management, and someone, let's say a woman's going along great, 3 weeks, check, doing it all. And then something happens or she's just not in the mood, she has a bad day, she doesn't accomplish any or only a portion of it. And so then she goes and she starts feeling like bad about herself. And, this is some of us, if we compare it to a diet, let's say, bad word, but like if we're trying to eat healthier to lose a little weight, but and we say, okay, no potato chips. I haven't eaten potato chips for 3 weeks, but then you get weak, you eat potato chips, and you just decide, let's just eat the whole bag and forget the whole thing. And how do you a lot of people can get up the next day and just get right back on the horse, but some go into self-rejection and just are too hard on themselves. What would be your advice for someone who was doing great with their timer and their plan, but lost their momentum or motivation for a day or two? Or
Yeah, it's really common, and I think we punish ourselves way too much for not being perfect 100% of the time. But it is impossible to be perfect 100% of the time, because life throws you curveballs. That's just kind of the way it works. And if we take your healthy eating example, you only need to be eating healthy 80% of the time to be considered to have a healthy diet. So if 5 or 6 out of 7 days you're eating healthy, and then one day you spend the day eating unhealthy food, that doesn't mean that you're unhealthy. And it's the same thing with when you're trying to manage your time or build a new habit or whatever it is that you're doing. If you're doing it 80% of the time, you are absolutely succeeding. And I started in 2020 before the pandemic, and during the pandemic, I was doing these 30-day challenges. So every month I would task myself with doing something new. And the goal was to get to doing it for 30 or 31 days, however long the month was. But if I didn't manage to do it for the full 30 days, that doesn't mean that I failed. I still, by the end of the month, had done the habit more than I had the previous month and had built the new habit. And on the months where it was, and for anyone that's trying to build a new habit or such like, on the months where you're doing slightly less well than you did the previous month, that doesn't mean you're not doing well at all. You don't need to be doing it 100% of the time, but you do need to get better at picking yourself back up when you do fall off the wagon. And it's perfectly okay to fall off the wagon, and it will happen. I think you need to go into it expecting it to happen, because if you can go into it knowing it's going to happen, then when it does happen, it won't be such a shock. You won't feel so rubbish about it, and it will be a lot easier to kind of get back up and do it again the next day. And if you need to take a couple of, let's say you've fallen off the wagon today and you just get out of bed and you just don't want to do anything, and I've got a chronic pain condition, so I get this completely. There are some days when I just don't feel like doing anything, and I will give myself the day. I'll be like, okay, I need to do a lot less today, or I need to go and do something completely different, or I literally need to sit on the sofa and not move for an entire day. And I will give myself permission to do that, because it's just as important as doing the work. Because if you don't give yourself that time, you're going to end up not doing what you want to be doing for even longer, because you haven't given your body and your mind that time to rest that it needed. And by giving yourself that time, it means that the following day, when you are feeling better, it will be a lot easier to go back to doing all the work that you wanted to be doing.
I love everything that you just said. And it just really points to that whole mindset shift, because it really is about self-care. It's about noticing the glass half full instead of half empty. And I truly love the 80-20 rule. If you apply it to everything, it just takes that, that little extra heaviness off. And, I think it's getting better. We women are learning perfection is not even attractive. Nobody wants perfect. We want real, we want authentic, we want to, just see people like us that we can relate to, that have stories like us. And it, makes us feel like, okay, well, I'm okay. I'm like her. And, and I just think that's so important, because because of our history of being perfectionists or people pleasers, there's boundaries we sometimes don't set with others, and we also don't set it with ourselves. And and you also want to be able to, you're going into business or are in business for yourself because there's something about it that you love so much to go down this path, right? So you want to make sure that you're making that path enjoyable, and the moment it becomes where there's friction, it doesn't mean you have to throw out the baby with the bathwater, so to speak. It just, you need to maybe say, okay, am I pushing myself too much? Or maybe I don't like this task. Maybe I can delegate that, And so it's important to self question, right? And take care of yourself always, like as the first priority. It's I love this answer, and I'm glad this is how the interviews go sometimes. I have questions, but I might hear something and I'll be like, oh, I know that this is an issue for many, so let's talk about it. And then just this is where that gold comes in. So okay, thank you. Great answer. Okay, for you personally, what will you never compromise on with your business?
Ooh, that's a great question. Working with or around people that don't have the same values as me. So for my values in my business are authenticity. That's the first one. So that's at the forefront of everything. So being myself, doing things authentically, and not being a sleazy salesperson, for example. And if, let's say, I was outsourcing or there was a client that came in and what they did was kind of in direct contrast with that, I wouldn't want to and wouldn't work with them, because we just wouldn't gel. And also it would feel really inauthentic to be working with someone whose business practices or the way they work is completely different to the way that I want to serve my clients.
I love that. When you think about it, it's almost like, okay, like let's say you're dating, there's certain people that are a good fit because they have the right value system, and then some that are not meant for you, right? And like you're not going to marry the person that's not meant for you. So it's the same in business. It's, well, well, we all learned that one the hard way. You're not alone, right? I think we all have kissed a couple frogs, but it happens. So yeah, but the whole idea is like, I love that too. When you have your own business, you get to choose who you want to work with, and you can feel that energy, and if that energy makes sense to you. So I love that. And having that personal choice, again, that's your personal choice, your freedom, and one of the benefits of being in business for yourself. So again, for like women out there that are, that you always want to say yes, or you feel like you can't say no, yes, you can. If you are going about your business and you just feel like this client doesn't make sense for you, you have to not think about the lost sale or, the lost business possibility. You have to think about what it makes you feel like, because, you're inviting them into your world and you want your world to feel good. So, you have that discretion always, right? So,
Definitely.
yeah.
And I think if you, that you said there that it can be a worry that you'll miss out on the sale, but I think if you end up working with somebody that's not the right fit, you'll actually end up losing out on even more sales. I think it will end up what's the word I'm looking for, it'll end up coming back to you in a different way, and you'll lose out longer term is what
Yes. And it usually becomes one of the most difficult clients to work with. Sometimes I always feel like if in life in general, and sometimes it takes a little while to learn this, because I'm thinking about like my earlier youth and all the power and ambition, and I would put like in general just push myself with fitness like 3 hours a day, or just these crazy goals. And sometimes if you have to push so hard, it's not meant for you, and that is such a relief too. If it's taking too much effort, it's time to question it. It's even meant to be. I actually had this situation 2 days ago with tech and Instagram and trying to do some automations, and nothing was working. And I just was banging my head against the wall for hours until I finally stopped. And I said, because it was a new idea, I wasn't like fully 100% about it. And I thought, I think the universe, God, is trying to tell me something. And I said, oh, okay, let me stop this. And I ditched it. And it turns out I let go of this idea completely, released it. And what happened is the following day, a much better, oh my God, this is why, and this makes more sense. And then it was completely easy. So this is like a good sign of when things are meant for you. If it's difficult, question it, right?
Yeah, I love that.
But not like you know what I mean. In like if there's just friction. Friction's different than the power you need to achieve your goals. It's a whole different story. But okay, next. Let's see. If you could, is there anything about your business journey that you would change if you could go back in time?
Ooh. This is an interesting question because I don't like to regret things. I think
Exactly.
everything that I've been through has taught me something. And if I didn't go through it in the way that I did, I wouldn't have learned the right things. But if I had to pick something, it would be to understand myself, what journey my clients go on while they're working with me. I think if I could have understood that earlier, I would have been more successful early on. Because when I started, I had no business experience. I never wanted to be an entrepreneur. That wasn't my thing.
Wheels.
But
Right. Yeah.
I started the business because I wanted to help women. And I wasn't really sure at the start what I wanted to help them with, other than kind of fulfilling their potential, which is a really vague thing to try and sell. So yeah, I wish I'd kind of gotten clearer on who I was helping and what I was helping them with earlier in the journey.
Okay, now I'm going down the rabbit hole again. I love this because based on what you said, it got my mind thinking this is a big deal because I think most of us start with a very overgeneralized idea of who our ideal client is. And then, of course, we're always being, told to niche down, niche down, niche down. And that is helpful, but also sometimes confusing. And it's a big subject for most of us. So, with your experience now, like how did you come to discover who your ideal client is? What did you do to narrow that down? Because I think this would be very helpful advice for pretty much every woman listening to this.
So I did kind of two things. So one of my coaches suggested doing the 100 sentences. I don't know if you're familiar with this. So you write 100 sentences about your ideal client. So everything that you would want in a client that you're going to go and work with. And the idea of an ideal client is, imagine you've got like a dartboard and you're aiming for the bullseye. Like that would be the tiny little circle in the middle would be an absolute perfect client for you. When you're throwing the dart, if it lands slightly further outside the bullseye, it doesn't mean you can't work with them, but it just means that your marketing and what you're doing speaks to that one individual person. So the 100 sentences I found really helped with that, because it helped me structure my messaging and the way that I was talking. And then the other thing was working with people. So taking on clients that I thought perhaps were a good fit. Some of them weren't, some of them were, and that really helped shape who I work with now.
This is a great answer and very helpful. And it, makes you think like when we're young, right? We take certain jobs. Maybe it's, serving in a restaurant or, being a nanny or whatever, any type of job. And we go in there and then when we're in it, we're like, oh no, this is not for me or that is for me. But you don't know it until you walk through it, right? So like there's that point where you have to stop thinking, right? What do I like? What do I want? Who do I want to work with? What does she look like? All of the things. And it's that practical experience of actually having that hands-on experience that really helps you. And sometimes you're surprised because, you'll be like, oh my goodness, I really thought I wanted to do that or work with this person or add this in or take that away. And until you are in the midst of it, you can't answer it. And so sometimes the best thing to do is just get in the trenches and see how you feel about it and give yourself that that space to change your mind, right? This is so important too. Like, it's not set in stone. I think creating your own business is an evolution, and it's a living sort of entity that will grow as you grow. So you don't have to have it all figured out in one shot, right? So and you probably as you go along working even with more people, you probably even refine this more and more, huh? Yeah, so it
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
yeah.
I think there's a perception that when you go into business, you have to have everything perfect straight away and you can't possibly make mistakes. But I think
Yeah.
we forget that some of the greatest inventions in the world were created through trial and error. Somebody gave something a go, it didn't work, and then they kept giving it a go until they found the right thing. And it's the same thing in your business and with who you're working with. Like, give it a go, and if it ends up not being the right thing for you, there's nothing stopping you from pivoting or evolving or changing what you're doing.
Absolutely. And that always makes me think of Michelangelo and the Davida, and this big block of marble that was nothing. And then it just became one of the most iconic masterpieces, but it was nothing before. And it just chisel a little bit here and make it perfect there. And this is what a business is, and so, yeah, I think it's so exciting,
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
it's such a, like, you look back where you started and where you are sometimes, and you're like, wow, I am really moving along, and you got to take the time to give yourself some credit for what you've already accomplished, right? And that
Absolutely.
should also give you faith that there's more that you will accomplish. So like, I speak a lot to, I know like sometimes it's a hard journey sometimes, and women sometimes want to throw in the towel. And I'm always wanting these interviews to kind of say, it's okay, take a deep breath, dust yourself off, get back. You want to do this, it's meant for you, or else it wouldn't have been in your heart in the first place. So just, take a deep breath and then get going again when you're ready. So, okay, on that note, what is your favorite part of being an entrepreneur?
Working with different people, which is the same thing that I loved about working in corporate. But it's the people that you get to work with that make whatever it is that you're doing, it's the people that make it fun. And being an entrepreneur means you get more say over the people that you work with, which I think is fab. And whether that's kind of colleagues or people in the business, or I've got business besties now that I spend a lot of time with, and I wouldn't have met them if it wasn't for being an entrepreneur. And then also working with the clients and being able to help them on their journey. That would absolutely be my favorite thing.
Love it. Really love this. So, one of I'm a real big believer that, in the whole idea of self-care, I call them wealthy woman activities, basically. And the fact that, when you take good care of yourself, whatever that means to you, could be buying yourself flowers, it could be, taking a nap. But when you allow those self-care moments, I truly feel that it will fuel you to be a better businesswoman, make more money, make more impact, have more, influence overall. And so I always like to know, like, what is your favorite, like, self-care routine? And you can even talk about a morning routine if you have one.
So I love talking about self-care because I think it's really important that everybody understands that it's not taking a weekend away and going to a spa. It's the things that you do every day to look after yourself. And I would say that I've got quite an intense self-care routine that I do daily. So I do have quite a strong morning routine. I go to the gym in the morning. I do my personal quests every morning, which is a nicer way of saying chores. But I like to do something every morning so that they don't build up, so that I know that they're kind of done. I meditate every day. I do affirmations. I journal. I do like the red light mask thing. I've got one of those masks.
Yeah.
So in the afternoon, if I was having like an afternoon tea break, I'll have a little nap and put the mask on. And I do that every day. And I was doing that when I was running $50 million accounts in corporate. I did those things every day, and I still do them now as an entrepreneur, because taking the time out during every day is more important than getting to the point where you have to take a whole day out because you haven't given yourself the space or the time to look after yourself. And resting throughout the day makes you more productive than if you'd worked through the whole day. And you actually end up, the output from the work that you're doing is greater if you've taken the time to rest throughout the day.
Oh my goodness. It's so true. Like, just everything that you just said is so important. It is really foundational, because we are the so-called machine running our business, and we need that, the health to happen for us in all the ways to set us up for success. So I love that idea.
We are the greatest asset in our business, and if something happens to us, the business isn't going to continue. So we have to look after ourselves.
Yeah, love this. I mean, that's it right there. And also, the people in our lives, right? Like, we can be the better version of ourselves when we actually take good care of ourselves. It's so important, and nothing that you have to sort of apologize for or ask permission for. No, these are definite things that you should be putting into place, and they're different for everybody, right? So like, but you know yourself, what you need, what makes you happy, and what fuels you, and then you just start from there. So yeah. I always like to ask this question because, I'm sure like every person that sees this would want to work with you for sure. And maybe there's just someone in a position that can't at the moment for whatever reason. Do you have any advice for someone, so that they can have a self transformation by doing it on their own, bootlegging it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Not
Actually,
going bootstrapping it.
I've got a digital product that they could download. It's £7. And that goes through everything, all the exercises that I would teach you in my one-to-one coaching. It's in a little book that you can kind of work through yourself, and which you can find on my website. But if you wanted to kind of just literally do it by yourself, I think the first thing I would suggest that you do is, as we said at the beginning, is kind of look at how are you spending your time and what are you spending it doing. And if you're finding that you're not spending it doing revenue generating activities, perhaps it's time to kind of do a bit of a change up and focus more on the revenue generating activities and not the like admin side of the business. Because I find that business owners can get really bogged down in the admin and maybe the marketing, but not so much the actual revenue generating activities where you're conversing with your ideal client and getting on discovery calls and the stuff that's actually going to bring in the money.
Yeah, love this. And I love this. There's always those resources that we can start with, and then we can work our way up to more later. So just getting started, getting those good practices in place are so important. So, okay, I have one more question for you, because, you are just a powerhouse. It just is amazing. It comes across, you just have, you radiate, like you just really do. I just love everything about what you're doing, how you're doing it, your whole focus, mindset, work ethic, all the things. You definitely have all of your ducks in a row, so to speak. Just wondering, when you were, let's just say back in the day, did you have to work on yourself to get to this point? And how did you do that? What was maybe one of the bigger things that you had to kind of, grapple with yourself to say, come on, you got to do this. You can do it. Like how did that, your own transformation, I guess, where you were to where you are now, what was the biggest change, and how did you make that change come to be?
I love that. And yeah, the journey that I've been on over the last, what am I now, 10 years has been insane. And if I had to go back and talk to kind of 23-year-old me, I don't think she'd believe any of what I've done now. And I think there's two kind of really big pivotal moments. So one of them, I was still working in corporate. I've been in corporate for about 3 or 4 years. And as far as I was concerned, I had made it. Like, I was a huge success. I think I was on about 50K at the time, which for me was more money than I ever thought I'd make. I was happy because I was no longer in a marriage that wasn't working. I was living in London. Like, life was epic. And my manager at the time sat me down and said, cool, what's next? And I was like, what do you mean? What do you mean what's next? And I didn't have any goals, because as far as I was concerned, I was done. And she made me really question, like, you're only like 26, like you need to think about what you want to be doing for the next like 50 years. And that was when I put some goals in place. And one of the goals I set at the time was to hit 6 figures before I turned 30, which I ended up doing 6 months before my 30th birthday, which was awesome. But if I hadn't put those goals in place, I would have just kind of kept coasting and being happy with the life that I had. And I imagine at some point I'd have ended up unhappy with the life that I had. So I'm really glad that I took the time out, thought about what I really wanted, and got those goals set. And then the second time, this was 2020. So I'd already hit my 6 figures. I was definitely successful, but I felt like I was at that point, yeah, kind of coasting through my success and not really appreciating life as much as I could. And that was when I started focusing on kind of personal development. And that's why I did the monthly challenges in 2020 and really challenged myself to do different things every month to prove to myself that I could keep my promises to myself, and to see what other things I might like doing. So I did like a month of yoga. I did a month of giving up red meat, and then that led to me being vegan for like 2 years. And it was just a lot of things that I wouldn't have done otherwise, and it really pushed the boundaries of what I could do as a person. And that's the year that I started the business as well. And I don't think I'd have started the business without having done that and kind of really thought about what I could do and what I wanted to do. So that would be my 2 big transformation moments.
Excellent. I love this. And I mean, what a transformation. And, constantly paying attention to yourself, where you're at, making strong goals, checking in, see if you've achieved them or how long you have to go, and like being aware of all that. I mean, it is amazing. And you can tell that you are going to have this toolbox, so to speak, with you for your whole life through. This is just, you can see it's in you. I'm just thinking about the occasional woman who sometimes goes into self-sabotage. Again, this is a mindset thing. You don't seem to have, or did you possibly have any self-sabotaging behaviors that you had to kick yourself out of? And how did you do that?
I definitely did have them. Yeah, I was after the divorce, after I moved to London, I was definitely at my lowest point, and I just didn't really feel like I'd be that capable of doing anything. And I started making little promises to myself and keeping them. And it could be as little as going to the gym. And that was a promise that I made myself that I was going to do. And I went and did it. And the more often you do that and you keep a promise to yourself, the more confidence you build in anything that you're doing. And I think that would be my advice to anyone that's feeling like they are sabotaging themselves. Do something, tell yourself you're going to do something, and then go and do it. And it doesn't have to be massive. You don't have to train for a marathon or whatever it is. It could be that today I'm going to drink enough water, like, and then do that thing. Do something that's going to make you feel better, even if it's tiny, and then keep doing that day after day. And you'll find that you'll then trust yourself that you're going to be doing these things, and you can add in more things, and it'll end up being a snowball effect, and then before you know it, you're going to be the greatest CEO that you ever dreamt of.
I couldn't think of a better way to stop, because that advice is perfection, because it can just be the littlest thing and you check it off and you feel good, and you just build on that, build on that, build on that, instead of, being the so-called weekend warrior. Take little baby steps and you'll get there. And it is such great advice. You think that, we would always know this or always put this in place, but that's not the case. And this is that human side of us, where we just make these gigantic goals and then we don't accomplish them all. So we forget about the 80% we did right, focus on the 20% we did wrong. And then we just, sometimes we have those moments. And I appreciate that tip. And it is
Yeah.
so helpful. And I know, like, even for me, like, I think that's why I always love to-do lists, or like even now apps, like you have tasks and they remind you, you check them off, you see all the check marks and you start to feel really good. Okay, did that, did that, did that. And I know some people like it could be like back, let's just say, I don't know, mow the lawn or vacuum the house or, make a post or whatever. And they already did it, but then they'll add it to their list just to check it off, because why not? Right.
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
accomplished it. Right.
And
So
every time you check it off, it releases dopamine in your brain, which is why we love doing it. So the more you check it off, the more dopamine gets released, and then your body gets addicted to that tiny little release of dopamine, which makes you want to do it again.
well, there you go.
And I just want to emphasize, one of my favorite mantras is, it's the small, consistent changes that you make over the long term that make the difference. It's not the big changes. So when it gets to New Year and we set our New Year's resolutions and you're going to completely change your entire life, that's never going to work. It's never going to stick. And I think it's the average date that most people give up on their New Year's resolutions is like the 17th of January. But it's the small changes that you make over the long term, like getting up 15 minutes earlier so that you can read 10 pages of a book, or drinking enough water every day. It's those little things that you do over the long term that are really going to help you see the difference and make you the success that you want to be.
Yes, and that's the whole thing. You have to set yourself up for success, not failure. And then you have to really be aware, is this really me? Do I really want to do all this? Let me be a little bit more, what is the, and I always like to say this, I've said this before on a couple of my interviews, but I always say, think of like one of the days where you're not really in the most motivated moods, or just whatever, your worst type of day. What can you do even on that day? And then that should be your baseline, because if you can accomplish that on your worst day, then you can definitely accomplish that on your best day and then some. And at least, that way, that if you have a really bad day, that you can still check a couple things off to get that dopamine rush and still feel accomplished, and go from there to build. It's like one step at a time, the entire process, and that evolution, right? We talked about. Well, this is amazing. I'm so inspired, love everything that you said. Really, truly super helpful. You're going to help so many people when they listen to this or watch this. So one more time, what is your website? And then we'll sign off from there.
It's sixfiguresuccess.club.
Oh my goodness. So I want to thank you so much for being here today. I am truly excited to get this beautiful success story out there. You're an amazing, inspirational woman, and anyone would benefit by being in your company. So and
Thank
being a part of
you.
your world. So thank you so much.
Thank you for
And
having me.
my pleasure. Okay, wealthy women, I told you this was going to be another truly amazing success story interview. So, just feel it. Just bring this energy and inspiration into yourself and go forward with your dreams. You will accomplish everything that's in your heart because it's in your heart for a reason. It wouldn't be in your heart if it wasn't meant for you. So you can trust that. And then you just take your one step at a time, forward, 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 and you will get there. And if you take a step backwards too, that's okay too. Remember to give yourself a break when you need it. So until next time, signing off for now. Bye bye.